we are going to discuss only two problems. But two problems are very simple in some sense, but at the same time it's very beautiful, because the first one is not related to a sequence of random variables but based on only one random variable. This is actually known as Kolmogorov's inequality, and this gives us a kind of lower bound, actually a lower bound in terms, and the bound is defined in terms of variance of the random variable. But it is important to note that the random variable in this case that we considered in this problem are all bounded, and most probably bounded by 1, because we can always consider a random variable which is bounded. We can, just with a loss of generality, we can consider this to be bounded by 1. So for that particular random variable, we have found one lower bound to a probability of a particular event. And to continue in the same spirit, we have actually opened up a very interesting area that involves the proportion of occurrences of events, although these events may not be independent. That is the most important thing. We are going to prove this result, and this again we are going to get some result, some convergence result using the previous inequality or Kolmogorov inequality, and we will see that the technique is really very nice to see. We are going to discuss this in a minute. Today we will discuss only two problems, but two very interesting problems, very special problems, I believe. So let's start with a very famous Kolmogorov inequality. It's very simple but extremely important in probability theory, and later we will see the application of Kolmogorov inequality in deriving another interesting result. Suppose x is a random variable which is bounded by 1 in absolute value. That means modulus of x is always less than equals to 1. Then if we consider any epsilon which is arbitrarily small but positive, then we can get one kind of lower bound to the probability of mod x greater than epsilon. That means probability of modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon is greater than equals to expectation of x square minus epsilon square. Now this inequality is for only one random variable. Since it is bounded by 1, it is clear that expectation of x and expectation of x square exists. In fact, it can be shown that few other higher order moments will also exist, but it is enough to consider for the moment that expectation of x square exists, that means variance exists, and we can get the lower bound to the probability in terms of second order moment. And it is again very interesting to see that this moment minus some epsilon square. Now remember, epsilon is very small. Epsilon square is again smaller than that, is extremely small. So some quantity which is slightly less than the second moment can be treated or regarded as the lower bound to the probability modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon. So how to prove this result? Now here it is very obvious that we can, so first we have to find out how to start this problem, or its solution rather. So whether to start from the left hand side or from the right hand side. Now we know that expectation of x square, we can manipulate this expression in many ways. So let us start to see that whether we can start with the let us see whether we can start this solution with from right hand side, that is from the expression of expectation of x square. And remember how we have proved Chebyshev's inequality. Chebyshev's inequality is very famous, and just recall the proof of the technique of the proof of Chebyshev's inequality. There we in many cases we have started with expectation of x square. So if we start with expectation of x square, it would be enough if we can show that expectation of x square is less than equals to probability modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon plus epsilon square. So that is what we want to prove. So now expectation of x square, we can split this since there is an epsilon involved in the entire expression, in the probability expression or in the entire inequality. But remember one thing, that this expectation of x square, this expression does not involve epsilon directly. So, and there is another expression modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon. So if we want to relate this expression or x square with this expression, that is modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon, it is very easy to split this expectation of x square in terms of two quantities, like x square, expectation of x square into indicator function over modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon plus expectation of x square into indicator of modulus of x less than epsilon. So now you see, it is clear that somehow by a simple trick we have involved epsilon in evaluating the expression of expectation of x square. So that is the beauty of this proof. Suddenly from nowhere we have brought one epsilon and incorporated or introduced it in the expression or in evaluating the expression of x square, expectation of x square. Now it is clear that in the second term, indicator function modulus of x less than epsilon. That means the second term, this takes zero value whenever modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon. So the highest value that x can take in the second expression is epsilon. So if we replace x by epsilon, now remember x is a random variable but epsilon is a fixed positive quantity. So if we replace x by epsilon, that means we are replacing this random variable by some upper bound, and upper bound is a pure real number. So we get another inequality. That means we can immediately write that expectation of x square indicator of modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon plus the second term is less than or equals to, or we can write less than epsilon square. Now what is this quantity, expectation of x square modulus of this? Just a little bit of manipulation, it shows directly that it is nothing but modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon, probability of that plus epsilon square. So the proof is complete. So this is the beauty of this proof. And remember one thing, x is bounded by 1. So this gives us the proof of Kolmogorov inequality. Now let us consider another problem which involves a sequence of events. So let us first consider an, where n equals to 1, 2 and so on be an arbitrary sequence of events. Now if we define random frequency of occurrence of n first ones, that can be defined as xn, which is nothing but 1 by n summation I of ak. That is indicator of ak. That means the number of times I of ak, or if ak occurs, then indicator of ak will take the value 1, and if ak doesn't occur, this indicator will take 0. So sum over all such indicators will give us the occurrences of ak. That means how many times ak or a1, a2 and so on in occurrences out of the n events, and the proportion of this is defined as the frequency or the relative frequency of occurrence of in first ones. So this is kind of average, or we can think of kind of proportion, and when we say this is kind of proportion, that reminds us somewhere that probably it has something to do with the Bernoulli variable, where p is the proportions, and we can easily write a Bernoulli variable or a binomial variable in terms of the indicator functions. Anyway, so given the fact that we have defined xn as 1 by n summation I ak k over 1 to n, let us set two quantities. One is p1 n, which is equals to 1 by n summation k equals to 1 to n probability of ak, and p2 n equals to 2 by n into n minus 1 into summation over 1 less than equals to j less than k less than equals to 1 probability of aj intersection ak. Now, just one thing I should point out here, that probability of AK can sometimes be interpreted as expectation, or in fact it is exactly equals to expectation of indicator of AK, or expectation of IAK is nothing but probability of AK. Similarly, we can have expression for probability of AJ intersection AK in terms of expectation of IJ and IAK, IAJ and IAK. So, given these expressions, the way we defined it, we can show that for every epsilon greater than 0, probability modulus of xn minus expectation of xn greater than equals to epsilon that goes to 0 if and only if this quantity p2n minus p1 square n goes to 0. Now, initially, in the previous problem in Kolmogorov's inequality, we have seen one lower bound to probability modulus of x greater than equals to epsilon. Now, here we see that this is kind of the same expression, because they are probably we consider the boundedness. So here we consider modulus of xn minus expectation of mod xn greater than equals to epsilon, but this probability goes to 0 under a particular condition. In fact, this is both necessary and sufficient. This is very important. Again, the proof is extremely simple. But before going to the proof, I would like to point out one very important thing, that this sequence of events, this arbitrary sequence of events, we can think of some independent events. In that case, it has direct analogy with the Bernoulli trials. But it is not necessary to consider that the sequence of events are independent. It can be any arbitrary sequence of events. Even then, this result holds true. Let us see the solution. First, note that this P1n and P2n, the way it is defined, are both bounded by 1. That is immediately clear from the way we have set this P1n and P2n. Then we have expectation of xn equals to 1 by n. Now xn is 1 by n into summation iak. So expectation of xn equals to 1 by n expectation of summation iak. Now we know that this is a finite sum and there is no problem in bringing the expectation inside the summation notation. So this boils down to 1 by n summation k equals to 1 to n expectation of iak. Now expectation of indicator function is nothing but the probability of occurrence of the set on which the indicator is defined. That is, in other words, expectation of iak equals to probability of ak. And this is the quantity we have defined as P1n. So it is clear that expectation of xn equals to P1n. So I have actually evaluated this thing very rigorously so that we will be able to understand how one can evaluate the expectation of xn, which is a function of the indicator function, and eventually it turns out in terms of the probability of the occurrence of events involved in this entire problem, and this is equals to P1n. So the ultimate expression is very simple as per the definition of the setting of the problem. So naturally, the next task is to find the variance of xn. So I am not going to evaluate this variance of xn in detail, but I will just give you the outline. That means first calculate expectation of iak square and expectation of iaj into iak. Because if I want to take expectation of xn, that means I have to, or rather the variance of xn, that will involve taking the variance of summation of indicator functions. So if we expand it, it will involve the expression for expectation of iak square, or the square of indicator function, and expectation of product of two different indicator functions. So a little bit of algebraic manipulation will give us the expression of a variance as variance of xn as p2n minus p1 square n plus 1 by n into p1n minus p2n. Although it looks the expression a little long, but it's very easy to find out by using the expression for expectation of square of indicator and expectation of product of indicator functions. Now remember one thing, that the way we have defined xn, which is 1 by n summation of I a k, that means proportion of time or the number of times, so the proportion of times ak occurs, so clearly modulus of xn is less than equals to 1. So all we are dealing with is sequence of random variables which is bounded by 1. Now when it is bounded, as soon as we get a random variable or a sequence of random variables which is bounded by 1, we can immediately apply the previous inequality, that is Kolmogorov inequality, which is true or which we have proved to be true when for a bounded random variables bounded by 1. And of course we have to apply Chebyshev's inequality along with that inequality in order to get variance of xn minus epsilon square less than equals to probability of modulus of xn minus expectation of xn greater than equals to epsilon less than equals to variance of xn by epsilon square. Now note that this left hand side, left part of the inequality is coming from Kolmogorov's inequality and the right part of the inequality coming from Chebyshev's inequality. And it is clear that if variance of xn goes to 0, then this entire quantity will be, this right side quantity will be extremely small, goes to 0, and the left side for arbitrarily small epsilon is again will be very, very close to 0. That means it implies that the middle portion or the main expression that is in which we are interested in this problem, that is probability of modulus of xn minus expectation of xn greater than equals to epsilon, that goes to or that bounded by two numbers which are very, very small and very close to 0 whenever variance of xn goes to 0. So we can write immediately that probability modulus of xn minus expectation of xn greater than equals to epsilon goes to 0 if and only if variance of xn goes to 0. And what is variance of xn? We have just seen that this is the expression of variance of xn. So what we get is, if we mean that variance of xn goes to 0, that will again imply or is implied by, that is if and only if this entire quantity p2n minus p1 square n plus 1 by n p1n minus p2n goes to 0. Now note that p1n is a bounded number, p2n is also bounded by finite quantity. So p1n minus p2n is a finite quantity which when divided by n will go to 0 as n goes to infinity. So we are all left with only the first two terms, that is p2n minus p1n square, it should go to 0 because the next term, third term, will always go to 0 as n goes to infinity. So variance goes to 0 if and only if this first two terms, that is p2n minus p1 square n goes to 0. So that gives us the proof. So the beauty of the proof is that the way we defined or the problem that is given, that we are dealing with the sequence of bounded random variables. As soon as we get the boundedness, we can immediately apply the previous Kolmogorov's inequality in order to get a lower bound. And as we know that we can easily always use Chebyshev's inequality to get an upper bound. Now interesting to note that both lower bound and upper bound involves variance of xn in such a way that the middle term or the main expression or the main quantity of interest would be bounded by two arbitrarily small and very, very close to 0 numbers. Two numbers that are very, very close to 0. And since epsilon is arbitrary, so this quantity will go to 0. Quantity of interest, that is probability modulus of xn minus expectation of xn greater than equals to epsilon, goes to 0 if and only variance of xn goes to 0, which eventually turns out that if and only p2n minus p1 square n goes to 0 because p1n and p2n both are bounded. And that completes the proof. So we have seen the Kolmogorov's inequality, which involves a probability expression with having a lower bound. Lower bound is in terms of the expectation of its square, or rather very close to the variance. Now we have also seen another theorem which is very, very important because in the sense that we should note some important features. One is that this gives us the proportion of occurrence of sequence of events, of few events. In the first n trials, I can say. Now, if these events are independent, then it is nothing but the Bernoulli trial, or that will lead to binomial random variable. But we did not use this independence. That means this result will hold true even when the sequence of events are not independent, is the arbitrary sequence of events. And based on, again, the way we define this proportion means it should lie between 0 and 1, and hence it is bounded by 1. As soon as it is bounded by 1, that immediately tells us that we can immediately use somehow Kolmogorov's inequality. Now remember, Kolmogorov's inequality gives us a lower bound. So, and we know that Chebyshev's inequality might give us an upper bound. So, can we combine these two bounds in order to get some expression or some converging result? If the two bounds are converging to a particular same value, then we can immediately have a converging result. Kind of sandwich. The idea of sandwich theorem. So, in fact, this is true, but under a particular condition. And that particular condition is not really very non-trivial, not really very trivial, I should say. But it is very interesting to see. But intuitively, it might be clear that under this condition, the probability of the probability of our interest, the probability of the event of interest goes to 0. And this thing we have proved using simple application of Kolmogorov's inequality and Chebyshev's inequality together, like to get the two bounds, which eventually converges to 0. So this is one technique which we can use in many other problems in order to prove some convergence theorems, that we can approach to the same quantity, to the same number from two different sides, and using the idea of sandwich theorem we can prove that result.